Hi, this is Munson with Munson Music, and we're going to talk about a really easy way that you could play a song called Stolen Dance by Milky. And we end up capoing this on 4th fret, and if you're interested in playing it how he's playing it with the bar, I've shot another lesson for that. Hopefully there's a link on this video, and you can go, I love bar chords, and you can click on that link and go there. But otherwise, for this video, we're going to end up capoing this on 4th fret to kind of match the recording. We'll walk through a couple things in root position just to kind of just in case you don't have a capo. So you could kind of play the song this way in root position, and we start on a C major chord, or on an E minor chord, actually, for our intro. And the way you play E minor, first finger goes to the A on the 2nd fret, second finger on the D 2nd fret. And if you strum all those together, that sounds an E minor chord, and it sounds really sad. Now you may also dig on adding in the 3rd finger on the B 3rd, pinky on the high E 3rd, kind of working that for your E minor through the song. And then from the E minor, we can go into a D major chord. And normally you do this first finger on the G 2nd, second finger on the high E 2nd, 3rd finger on the B 3rd, and if you strum the D string to the high E, the beautiful sounds of D major. Now you may also want to lift off the 2nd finger, always a dangerous finger to lift, but that makes a D sus2, or you could add in the pinky on the high E 3rd for D suspended and kind of say some things around the D chord. And then from the D we go to a C major chord, and when you play C major, first finger goes to the B on the 1st fret, second finger on the D 2nd fret, 3rd finger on the A 3rd fret. And if you strum the A string to the high E string, that sounds a C major chord, and it sounds really happy. And you may also dig on lifting the first finger and making that a C major 7, or you could add in the pinky on the B 3rd for C major 9, or another way to play C major 9 is to do first finger on the D 2nd, second finger on the A 3rd, 3rd finger on the B 3rd, pinky on the high E 3rd. And if you strum the A string to the high E string, that sounds a C major 9. Man, we're going to dig on that for the song too. And then from the C on our intro, we go to a G major chord. Normally you do this first finger on the A 2nd, second finger on the low E 3rd, 3rd finger on the high E 3rd. And if you strum all those together, the beautiful sounds of G major. Now you may also dig on putting the 3rd finger on the B 3rd, pinky on the high E 3rd, kind of working that for your G major. And then from the G, well, you're going to kind of a B major or B7 chord. I think the easiest way out here is B7. So we're going to do first finger on the D 1st fret, second finger on the A 2nd fret, 3rd finger on the G 2nd fret, and the pinky on the high E 2nd fret. And if you strum all those together, the A string to the high E string, that sounds a B7 chord, which randomly, if you want to jazz this up a little bit more even, you could take your 3rd finger and flatten them over the G, B, and E, and make that a B9 if you want to dig on that. Now rhythm-wise, the weird part is our first 2 chords, the E minor and D, kind of half a measure. So you may want to do kind of a 4 down on the E minor, 4 down on the D, and then C for A, G for A, and then our B7 for A. So that is a little weird. You know, that E minor, 2, 3, 4, D, 2, 3, 4, C, G, and I'm just kind of doing downstrokes and adding a little bit of muting to that just to kind of make that a little sneaky, so you can kind of dig on that through the tune. Or one of my favorite strum patterns for a 4/4 like this is down, down, up, up, down, up. So we took the E minor and just tried that a lot. You have down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, 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 up, down, up. Now the weird part is our first 2 chords, the E minor and D, kind of half. So you may want to do just a down, down, up on those chords. Then we have the C with the whole pattern, then our G with the whole pattern, and then our B7 with the whole pattern. Start that over again for our verses. So E minor down, down, up, B down, down, up, C down, down, up, down, up, G down, up, B7. And then we'll basically be repeating that through the verse 4 times, then we kind of stay on the B7 a couple times. And then from the B7, then we go into our chorus part. Our chorus kind of mixes up a couple of things we've been talking about. You'd have your C, G, B7, E minor, D, and we do that 3 times, and at the very end, we kind of end up kind of hanging out on an E minor chord twice. And then we kind of do a little tag where we do our E minor to D before we go into our next verse. Now the weird part is to play along with Milky, instead of starting on an E minor chord, you're starting on a G sharp minor chord. So to play along with the recording, what you want to do is take a capo, and if you put the capo on 4th fret, then now your E minor is really a G sharp minor, and your D is really an F sharp major, and your C is really an E major chord, and the G major is really a B major chord, and the B7 is really a D sharp 7. But to take it from the very beginning on the intro, you could just do the down idea, kind of E minor, of try it that way. And actually going into the verse, actually we'll go ahead and try that for the verse. So you have the E minor, down, up, B, down, up, C, G, B7, do it again, E minor, D, C, G, B7, do it again, E minor, down, up, D, down, up, C, tried that idea through the chorus. We got C, G, B7, E minor, D. Do it again. C, G, B7, E minor, D. Then do it again. C, G, B7, E minor. And then we kind of go back to the C, G, B7, and then we go to E minor, and we kind of hang out on E minor, another E minor, and at the very end we kind of hack on E minor, D one more time. And then from there, then we're going back into our intro part. Now one other thing I think about adding to the song though is bass notes. And a lot of times on that first down, 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 up, down, up, you can throw in a bass for the chord. So on the low E you'd have, or on the E minor you'd have low E. On the D you'd have a D for the bass. On the C you'd have the A for the bass. On the G you'd have low E for the bass. And on the B7 you'd have the A for the bass. So we tried that through that intro return. Then you'd have the E minor, D with the D bass, C with an A bass, G with low E bass, B7 A bass, E minor low E bass, D, C, G, B7. And then if we tried that idea through our next verse, we have the E minor, D, C, G, B7. Do it again. E minor, D, C, G, B7. E minor, D. Then do it again. C, G, B7. Do it one more time. E minor, D, C, G, B7. And then we hang on the B7 and the B7 to set ourselves up for our chorus. So then we try that through the chorus. We have the C, G, B7, E minor, D, C, G, B7, E minor, D. Then one more time. C, G, B7, E minor, D. And then we got that C, G, B7. And we got the E minor, another E minor, then an E minor, and a D to set us up to go back into our intro part. Now what sounds a little bit more like what Milky Chance is actually doing is more like a fingerstyle idea. And if you're kind of interested in that, your thumb becomes your bass player for the E and the A and the D string. And one way to kind of line up the fingers is to do index on the G string, middle finger on the B string, ring finger on the high E string. And the main idea kind of becomes a bass chord, or kind of a thumb, fingers, kind of an idea. And the weird part is on the halving chords that we've been doing, you would do that one time, and then on the C chord you do it twice. On the G you do it twice, and on the B7 you do it twice. So our whole measure, we kind of end up with that pattern twice. So on that next intro that way you'd have the E minor, D, C, G, B7, E minor, D, C, G, B7, next verse, we have the E minor, D, C, G, B7, and then we do it again. E minor, D, C, G, B7, and then we do it again. E minor, D, C, G, B7, and do it one more time. E minor, D, C, G, B7, and do some more B7s. And you may just want to follow just the fingers idea on that last part of the B7, kind of build up some energy that way. So at the very end of that verse, you may want to think about kind of doing just a thumb, fingers, 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 fingers for your measure. Kind of B, bass, chord, 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 to kind of build up some extra energy. So that last time through, you'd have the E minor, D, C, G, B7, 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 to help lead into our chorus. And if we try that idea through the chorus, you'd have the C, G, B7, E minor, D, C, G, B7, E minor, D, C, G, B7, E minor, D, and then our attack, C, G, B7, and then E minor, and then the E minor, D, and then at the very end we kind of go back into our intro part. So back to E minor, D, C, G, B7, E minor, D, C, G, B7. We do that 4 times, and I know for myself I'd almost want to play a big E minor at the very, very end. But that's the basics of how you could strum through Stolen Dance and kind of working some fingerstyle too for Milky Chance tune. So good luck!